and this is our very special new video episode of Ningyo BINGO, one of two, where you keep collecting dolls but never seem to win the game. Right now, well, about a month ago, actually, we went to Castle Point Anime Convention in Hoboken, New Jersey, and had two lovely panels with lots of lovely people attending, and we got to teach some people about dolls. Right now, you're going to step into the classroom with us and experience our first panel that we did, which was the ball-jointed dolls as visual culture. I hope you enjoy.
But today, our goal today is to leave you understanding what is the stuff that goes into, why do people collect this, how is it satisfying, why are collections in general, why are people driven to collect things, and in particular how this hobby plays into those needs and desires of human beings.
So, as you're looking at the dolls today, and many of the pictures today, you might find them to give you a little knee-jerk reaction on the inside. That's okay, it's totally natural. It's because of this little thing called the Uncanny Valley. When you look at something, the closer it is to looking like a human, and the less it's actually alive like a human, the more it gives you that knee-jerk reaction, because your brain is going, oh shit, that's like a corpse.
Oh my goodness, it's a dead body.
It's okay. We believe in you. You'll push through.
We'll get through this together. It's hard.
Yeah. Just, you can beat back those primal urges. I believe in you.
We're also going to let you know we're going to be showing pictures of unclothed dolls that may be in somewhat unnatural positions. Some people find that a little creep you out, or you might have a few, it may be a little disturbing to you. Some of the dolls will not have eyes, like the eyes are removable. Some of the pictures may have eyes removed. So if you have any particular, this is the trigger warning. We are going to look at some things that for some people are kind of creepy. So bear with us, and if you do need to leave for whatever reason, we don't judge you, it's fine.
Even if it's just for the bathroom or something, you got to do it.
Yeah, we're going to talk, so take a break. It's fine.
It's cool. So, heading right into it, because a lot of us are new here, and we anticipated this, what is an Asian ball-jointed doll? At its most basic, they are made out of resin,
which is a type of advanced plastic.
They have ball joints, which is to say...
I think I can get to mine faster.
We'll find out.
All right, it's a race. Who gets the clothes off first?
Which is to say it's a...
Oh, my goodness. All right.
Fancy, fancy. If it wasn't for these shoelaces, I'd be there already.
Well, I have, nothing tied on him.
Well, yeah.
Hello, I won. This is a doll that's very close to its original state as you'll receive it from the manufacturer. So he's really great to kind of show you what a basic thing looks like. This is a ball-jointed doll from a very unusual company. He's made out of resin. Makes sort of like a dull noise when you hit it. He has ball joints. You can see there's a ball. This is going to be a little creepy, but here we go. There's a ball here. There's a hole here. They sit in with each other, and as they move, there's elastic inside. Don't hit me. There's elastic on the inside. The tension of the elastic holds the joint together, and the friction between the two pieces allows it to take photos. Yes. On a very basic level, a ball-jointed doll has these features, and usually have joints in a lot of expected places on the human body, such as the shoulders, the elbows, the wrists, as you can see.
Yeah, at minimum.
Through the legs, all through the chest.
At minimum, usually shoulders, elbows, wrists. Might be one part or two part torso. This lady has a two part. Hips, knees, ankles, which helps in some cases make your doll be able to balance on an uneven surface, which is kind of nice.
And sometimes they just fall over.
And yeah, sometimes it just plots anyway, because,
But many of the dolls actually can stand on their own. You don't want to leave them there, but they can because of the tension, and they're very well balanced.
Yes. So that's what an Asian ball-jointed doll is, and the wigs do come off, so
you can't quite see it from that direction, but the wigs are removable. I think a lot of cosplayers are here. They look and act exactly like the wigs you have on your heads.
Yes, and they come in higher and lower qualities, too. So
high quality?
Well,
lower quality.
And there's higher quality than this, because this is like those wigs where you have the little, it's all bunched in at the top and it doesn't have a natural scalp or anything like that. They also have the higher ups and everything.
So now that we've got sort of the basic idea down, let's get into some more of the nitty-gritty of why is this a satisfying hobby for people? Why is collecting dolls, particularly these dolls, play into something that is sort of like a social need or a personal need?
And of course, these dolls didn't come out of nowhere.
That's right.
They came from somewhere. So a slight little timeline on how we got from point A to point D. Well,
D-zeta?
There's an E on another panel. Well, we'll deal with that.
So this is a basic progression in the last 200 or so years of where these current day dolls came from initially.
So what we're looking at first here on the upper left, this is a German composite doll with a bisque head. Composite being almost like a paper mache. It has glue, flour, sawdust, plaster, and various other things sometimes thrown into it. And it's painted over with something called size, which is a glutinous kind of mix to give it that kind of hard exterior. So
This was before resin was even developed, before plastics were a thing we could even access.
Then the head is called a bisque head because it's unglazed porcelain. As you can see, it obviously has something painted over it to give it the flesh tone. But this is in contrast to what's called a china head, which is what you see with those very pale white kind of old antique dolls. That would be a china doll.
Part of what's going on here is this is coming out of the Industrial Revolution when we can mass produce things. The reason that the body is made out of a composite material is because you can make a mold, which you can then reuse over and over, rather than relying on a craftsperson to make one by hand for either their children or for other people's children.
Also, because they're forcing it into the mold, it made these pieces, which were typically previously made out of wood, able to have hollow insides that were strung, like these, with, in this case, probably string, like nowadays.
We didn't really have elastics?
Yes. Funnily enough, like our dolls have head caps in the back now, which can be removed to put different eyes in. They also, when they worked with the clay beforehand, they cut the head. That looks terrifying when I do it on me. I'm sorry. And
it's hard when they look like people.
Yeah, and they would actually take it out, and when it was fired and finished, they'd put a cork back on it. So very similar to what you see today with a head cap, was once done with cork, which was easy to glue or even push hairs into.
And this is about what time period, Becca?
So this is late 1800s, early 1900s.
So Industrial Revolution.
Now, it's important to note,
later,
right around the same period, we did have what is called ichimasu dolls in Japan. So they weren't without their own jointed dolls. However, they were still working primarily with wood, tongue and groove joints, cloth, and these were definitely ones that were made for play, just like the bisque composite dolls, but it's just a little different. A cool feature that this guy has, just to kind of point it out, is he has kind of a double joint there in a way, so he can kneel.
This is pretty advanced for the time period, let me tell you.
So he can be all nice and proper while he's sitting with you at your tea ceremony, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. So basically, the first time we see dolls that look anything resembling the ones we have today were aimed at children and made out of materials that children could play with safely.
So our next jump up brings it into a realm of what's kind of called high art. And this is with Hans Bellmer in Nazi...
Pre-Nazi Germany?
Yeah, just about to be Nazi Germany.
Like the 1930s?
He published... he created this doll, took pictures of it, publicized it in something called The Doll, or Die Puppe, in 1934. He did this anonymously. However, the Nazi Party called him out, said that what he was doing was perverse and wrong because he was kind of sexualizing what looked like minors. And
Fine art, you know.
He fled to France.
So Germany said... No, he fled to France, and we know, if you know your World War II history, that didn't last very long either. But at least in France, this is where the sort of the cutting edge at the time of the art world in Europe was. So he was able to flee into a center of high art where people were really pushing boundaries about what was acceptable and what wasn't acceptable, which is partly historically there was pushback against that, and that sort of led into everything that happened. But this doll is part of that movement of sort of pushing the edge of high art and what is human, what is allowable.
So, pushing a little further in our timeline, we have Ryo Yoshida.
This is when we get to Japan.
Yes, this is a Japanese artist, and there was other doll artists in Japan at this time period. This was just one very prominent one, which he is still creating today. In 1973, he held his first art doll exhibition.
So 40 years later?
Yes, so 40 years later. As you can see, he's kind of continuing this idea of sexualization and kind of questioning it, deconstructing bodies and saying, you know, kind of looking at it and saying, this is this thing we're obsessed with, let's look at it different, let's tear it apart. So it's very cool. He actually opened his own school to teach doll making and the like. And in this climate of art dolls and large art dolls, these are not small ones, comes into the hobby shop Volks. Volks had been making resin model kits.
So like when when you go into the dealer's room and you see those beautiful statues made out of resin beautifully painted, there's a whole subculture around this time period of people taking resin kits, which is many people making personal molds and making small resin kits that are like all the pieces are in separate places. You have to paint it yourself. You have to put it together yourself. Volks was a main maker of these kits, and they also did things like model airplanes and things similar to that.
So one of their head sculptors, called Akihiro Enku, created an anniversary gift for his wife that was this doll, this exact doll right here.
This picture here.
Yes. And it was a gift, and of course, when you're a really cool artist in a place that's making cool anime stuff, the first thing you're going to do when you make something cool, like your cosplay, is like tell your friends. And so the wife of the boss of the company, who is Mrs. Shigeta, heard about it, and she asked to see the doll. Once she saw the doll, her first thought was, man, that would make a cool thing for girl hobbyists. Because at the time, Volks made model kits of sexualized ladies and characters.
As well as planes and tanks, which of course is just for boys.
Pretty much. And
I like tanks.
And she was looking at it from a lady's perspective going, I want girls to have a cool hobby too.
And there's a whole untapped market.
And she's like, can we mass produce this? And so, in 1999... the Super Dollfie was born, with Kira, Sarah, Nana, and Megu, all created out of the same sculpt, but painted with very, very simple monochromatic face-ups, not much in the realm of transparency or anything. And each of them, kind of to give them a different character, had a different wig that they were sold with.
Now, what we're seeing here is there's a movement with the Dollfie where it was originally a child's... We're coming from ball-jointed dolls aimed at children that were then taken into high art and then using that child connection to make high art out of it. That high art moved to Japan and influenced a bunch of people who are also working in high art. And then we have a hobbyist who's dedicated to a realm of hobby that is all about customization and personalization of what you're working with in resin. And so it kind of comes back down again into popular low culture, but it's no longer considered a child's toy. It's already moved through high art and has kind of lost that association by the time we get to these.
Yeah, now we're kind of not at, I'm going to go buy it at Toys R Us. We're going, I'm buying the kit to put it together. We're kind of in the realm of hobbyist art. An art that
like specialized hobbyist, semi-expensive hobbyist art.
Because even though you would get these girls, and some of the original versions might have like maybe just a slip cover to kind of like a pajama kind of thing, most of the time, and shortly thereafter, you were getting these guys, and you were getting the heads separate than the bodies, and they were totally blank, and you were working it like a hobbyist with a resin kit.
Exactly.
And that's where it kind of started.
So there's a fusion here.
Yes. So... continuing from that, is our basic thesis, which we kind of went over before. So, these things are kind of cool. You make them, you play with them, but why do it in the first place? And now that you have it and everything, how does this become part of our culture and part of your identity?
Yes.
So, we'll go a little into each of those.
And we're going to start out first with some science.
Yes. Because when you're feeling things, it comes a little from the heart, but it comes a lot from the head.
And we can also do other things that involve those chemicals to artificially stimulate these emotions as well.
Yes, so a lot of what we're talking about here today, it also applies to many other hobbies we're talking about, and even just running into a dealer's room or cosplaying
Anything
or
where
creating
you're
something.
collecting things.
Yes, it'll apply. So dopamine happens when you are happy, and it gives you a pleasure, satisfaction feeling. It's triggered by anticipation, waiting for that new dress or the thing you ordered on Amazon.
Or the next new episode.
Or the doll to come in the mail. And something challenging, like, I'm sewing this thing and I don't know how it's going to happen yet. Or
as every cosplayer in this room can connect to.
Or it can come from something new, walking into the dealer's room and seeing your favorite character on a piece of merchandise you've never seen before, and you are so jazzed up.
That's my problem.
Yeah. And in that moment, you make bad decisions because you've never seen it before. So
that's dopamine.
So following, we used to think that endorphins had a lot to do with our brain chemistry, but we actually recently found out that it kind of has a lipid barrier, so it doesn't pass the brain-blood
It exists
barrier.
in your body, but it can't get in your head easily.
It might trigger other chemicals that then get into your head.
But we don't know.
Yes, they're working on it. They're testing on mice and things. There's like one study so far.
But we do know that there are endocannabinoids that go into your brain that give you that very sustained sensation of pleasure or happiness, such as what they call the runner's high. When you've been running for a long time, you're just on this nice little coasting high of feeling good for a little while.
Yes, and if you hear the word cannabinoid of the endocannabinoid system...
And cannabis, which is a related word.
It's because the chemicals in cannabis, or marijuana, go into the same receptors that the endocannabinoid system isn't.
And then give you a sustained sense of pleasure or safety.
Bingo! So the reason those sensors are there is not just for marijuana, there's other things that plug into there.
But unfortunately, it doesn't actually apply to what we're talking about.
Well,
too much.
Not often, no. But we also have serotonin. Basically, easily happy feelings. It's released when you have happy feelings. And
or when you
feel
succeed
good.
at something.
Yes.
It's like, I did the thing and I feel good about it. That's serotonin in your head.
And accomplishing a task. We have what's called GABA. Gamma aminobutyric acid. Yes.
We worked on that one.
Yes. Gamma aminobutyric acid. Gives you calm feelings, and is kind of released when you're doing calming, repetitive activities.
Or like meditation or similar kind of activities.
Those adult coloring books. Maybe if you're that person that plays Tetris and zones out. If you hand sew something. I used to do that all the time.
No, I'm laughing at the nodding right here. He's like, yes, I remember Tetris.
And finally, you have adrenaline, which can kind of push into all these things. It's not a direct feeling of exciting or
good
happiness.
Feeling.
Right, but it, does some things that kind of push the rest of your body into action. It increases your blood flow, increases your breathing rate, and
all the things you need when you're in danger and you need to get the hell out of Dodge. But it also kicks in when you're trying to accomplish a task and you need that extra edge, that competitiveness. The competitive edge is sort of part of that system in your body.
So it'll also come around when you're doing something challenging, like at the same time the dopamine would kick in. But
what does this have to do with these guys?
Well, let's talk about why people tend to collect what's called the doll family.
Now, what's a doll family, Becca?
Well, it's kind of like that.
It looks like this.
You
also like this.
You don't tend to just get one doll.
Most collectors find that when you get one, somehow it's no longer enough.
Yes.
As with many collections.
There's a few reasons.
I see nods here. I think people understand.
Yeah. Vinyl. I know some people with vinyl pops. It's like.
That's not me, but I know these people too.
So let's just talk about what
drives you to do that collecting? Why do you need to get more?
One thing is just the simple act of purchasing makes you feel good. Not actually getting the gosh darn thing, just purchasing the thing feels good. You go out and you search for something, and it's challenging. You're looking for a certain edition, a certain skin tone, a certain model. You need it to be the right price so you can find it. The challenge releases your dopamine, and you're anticipating getting the right thing.
So there's a chemical reward to the process of searching out exactly what you want. The ball-jointed dolls are so personable and very different amongst themselves, and often limited editions or only for 3 months were sold. There's in this hobby in particular, that search and the hunt sort of situation is very strong, so that dopamine release is very common in what you're doing already.
So next thing is you're going to purchase that thing. In which case, you're it might be challenging to purchase it. You have to figure it out. Maybe you have to translate some Japanese websites. Maybe
Ask a friend to translate some websites.
Use a shopping service. Figure all that out. And maybe, just maybe, if you're bidding on something on eBay.
Oh gosh.
See more of that in our second panel. You will get some adrenaline mixed in there to kind of build in on all the challenge and excitement.
Like just a moment ago, me and Becca were racing to see if we could undress a doll first.
There you go.
That's a very simple challenge that gave us a very simple adrenaline rush.
Yes, very small. My heart beat like maybe once more than the average.
See, I'm not a challenge.
You'll have to try harder next time.
And then the sports anime happened.
Anyway. So now, because these dolls they're called Asian ball jointed dolls because they're made basically in Asia, primarily China, Korea, Japan. There's dolls at this point in creators across the world. The advent of 3D printing has even furthered the ability for this to happen, though those aren't usually resin. Sometimes they are. But the waiting period is, of course, more anticipation, which is more dopamine, which kind of makes you feel more good and looking forward to this moment.
So this whole process up into, even the purchase point and the waiting point, which are very common with the dolls, is this giant dopamine sort of IV drop into your head.
Yes. Finally, the doll arrives, and you have a big burst of serotonin because it's happy and it's here, and hopefully nothing's broken. Oh, God. At which point you might have, terrible
And then you have
nightmares.
to open up the box, and that process of opening something you've been waiting for 3 months or a year, depending on what you're doing. That's a huge situation for your head.
People take pictures of it like people take pictures of babies arriving home at the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, box openings, I know we've seen it on electronics and everything. I mean, electronics and other vinyl things.
And electronics as well. You also have those YouTube videos of people opening up the box and showing you what's in it.
But everybody's so satisfied with them because they want that. They probably are anticipating their own arrival, and they're living vicariously through the other person getting their final boof.
So there's a lot of chemicals going into the whole entire process, and you go have all of this stuff, and then what happens?
Then you don't have any more because it's arrived. Until you do
You're not waiting for anything. You're not buying anything.
With that doll again.
It already got here.
So the problem is then, one reason that doll families can be so big is if you get into what's called an addiction cycle and you go back to the search. And you
for that dopamine.
So if you start from the beginning again and without finding your next happy outlet, you're going to kind of do this cycle. So it's good to find other things that kind of curate your collection.
You want to be able to control yourself, but this also plays into a natural habit, an already existing precondition of humans as animals that we like to organize things.
Yes.
We love it. We want to make categories. We want to make words for things. We want to add labels to things. We're addicted to it.
For example, I actually have 2 dolls that are taller than these guys. They're about the 60 centimeter, what's called the Super Dollfie large scale.
There's basic size ranges that are kind of consistent.
Also next panel.
But
basically, I have a boy and a girl in that size. And that feels good.
Because they're a set.
To me, they're a set. And that means it's kind of complete. It feels right. These guys, I don't have a boy in this size yet, so I'm like, eh. But honestly, there's not that much boy clothing that I'm into, so I'm not feeling that bad.
But basically is part of making a collection, part of the ball-jointed doll collecting hobby, is that you'll see people have these categories they create, and there's something very comforting about having something that feels complete outside of your normal, ordinary life. Our lives are really chaotic. Things happen all the time outside of our control. But what can you control? You can control the objects that you own and what they look like and your environment. And especially with something with a human visage and a human form, we can relate so directly to that, and we can create so many labels and categories out of that. It's extremely satisfying on a collector's level and a social level to have something that feels complete, but the problem is when it doesn't feel complete.
Yeah, and then it grows without control.
Thank you for coming. Don't feel bad. You don't have to sneak out. Thank you.
So, which brings us to the fact that you create these dolls. You might take pictures of them and things like that, which we'll get to in a second. And this is where we start using the dolls to identify ourselves and interact within our community. We can create for the dolls, sew things, take pictures, etc. You get support from the community by saying, how do I make this? How do I modify this? What's the right resin match for this other doll?
Which is a whole system that we'll also talk about in the next panel.
And obviously connecting and communicating. This is you communicating with your community. When you communicate with a community, you feel good, and you feel safe, and you feel cared for, and you feel understood, which all leads to you feeling good. So it's another...
Humans want to belong to a group and identify with something to add to your own sense of identity. And the BJD hobby community provides an outlet for that. And these dolls, in the way that they're formed, give you many outlets to kind of project yourself into them and then use that avatar of yourself to then make a community out of it.
So the online community, which is one way to interact, is very large.
It's huge.
And these are just a few of the ways that we do it. This is a
Some of these numbers are in the tens of thousands.
Yeah, this is a screenshot from the largest English speaking, typing, I don't know how you'd say it, online
English language website?
That would be the word. Online forum for Asian ball jointed dolls. Just looking through what they call their community section, you'll see people introducing themselves.
Introducing?
I know how to English. Introducing themselves, so introducing yourself to the community, asking new questions. There's a special spot just for a new question.
Newbieland.
There's a place for doll profiles where you can post up information about the character or image that you made, kind of projecting yourself or a piece of your art out there, and then people can react to it, which feels good. They can organize real-life meetups, which we'll get to in a section. Conventions. Hi.
We're at one.
Ordering and shipping questions to kind of figure out why on earth your doll is 6 months
overdue.
Yeah. Waiting rooms for when your doll is either 6 months or just a few months overdue.
Waiting feels good because it's a rush, but it also sucks. And it's something that you don't have a lot of control over. So this is a very good support for what we're talking about. This part of the system, the waiting period, is so intense emotionally in a way for many people in this hobby. There's an entire section devoted to commiserating with other people.
And since YouTube wasn't quite as big a crazy thing and easily accessible, and videos not easily accessible on every phone when this community started, we have what's called a box opening / arrival gallery, where the original form of the box opening video was sequential photographs.
Just showing the process of opening and sharing that emotional payoff with other people. And also bragging a little bit.
And up here, down here we have ball-jointed doll games, which is things you can derive, like try to take a photo of a doll and then have a next person post a photo of a doll with one thing in common.
Community interactions that require or at least rely upon the doll being something in your possession.
And these shipping questions is about ordering and getting your doll.
It's not about pairings.
However, there is
shipping.
There's matchmaker games here.
So your shipping is here and here at the same time.
Right. This is a different type of shipping where you can post up a photo of your doll.
This was a bad joke I made earlier.
I know, but I loved it. And you can kind of like use the character and do a little like role play of them kind of getting to know each other. And
so that's more of your self projection of you and who you are and the things and your identity and your imagination into the doll, because they're so customizable. Many people have very strong connections with certain characters or aesthetics that are then projected into the doll, and it makes it very emotionally dear to you, because in a way it represents you and it's kind of a part of who you identify as yourself.
Because you made it, and there's no other one. There's no other one in the world. You made this one. It's
unique to you.
Yes.
No one else has it, and that becomes a point of identity as much as me wearing my Tiger and Bunny shirt because I'm obsessed.
Or
I like you.
Yes. So
that's the exact same thing. It just happens to be a doll.
And then straight up, there's also just photo galleries, where we have galleries just of pictures being taken, sharing them from
creating
events
your own
like
stories
this
that you can then share with communities as a creative effort.
So Photostories are kind of an interesting phenomenon all on their own.
Especially considering a lot of this current stuff came from somebody taking photos of a doll initially as high art.
Yes. So what you'll get is Photostories. Photostories are similar to a box opening originally, where in a format you would have a picture after a picture after a picture with actions underneath the picture with descriptions of what people would be saying. Depending on people's level of ability in Photoshop and other things, some of them evolved into something more like this, which is something I made, oh my gosh, like 8 years ago. No, 10 years ago.
That is our old dorm room.
Yeah, that's where we used to stay together. So then you see things like this with word bubbles and different sized panels rather than just the screenshot that's like unedited and put up.
But you can clearly see there's a connection here to manga and anime influence, which is tied into anyone who's kind of into Japanese stuff. There's crossovers here of how you can, say you're a person who really wants to be telling the story, but you can't draw. You tried, it was sad, you never want to do it again. You now have this human-shaped avatar that you can then move in space and then use to create with. That doesn't require any drawing skill at all, so then you can further communicate your own ideas and your own identity through the object.
And some photo stories will take place in a total 1/3 or 1/4 fantasy world. Some of the other ones take place in the point of perspective of an animate doll, almost like this one. This was my doll.
As if the doll itself is a living object outside of yourself, and you're interacting with it.
Yes, this one is actually the yellow text is me, and the word bubbles are obviously coming from her as they are pointed at me.
Being sassy.
Right, she wants to change my background because she found a set of twin dolls that she was totally into. And we share.
Which is a little bit of a digression.
Yes, but it kind of gives you an idea of I have my identity. Part of my identity is me owning this doll. I created a persona for the doll. I interacted with the doll, gained happiness, created a piece of art, which I then shared on a community, which I then
received
feedback from. So it kind of goes like that.
So it's a way to kind of extend and widen your own sense of self, and maybe even project parts of yourself into the doll that maybe necessarily you don't want to claim for yourself as well.
So we also have interaction in physical meat space.
Like me and Becca.
This is very important in this hobby because just about everything is mail order, essentially. I guess people don't call it mail order anymore, but you know.
You go on a website, you put in an order, you cross your fingers, it shows up eventually.
Yes.
There's not a lot of, at least in the United States, you can't really go to a storefront and buy them.
So it's hard for a lot of people to see them in person until they actually, go to a meet or go to a convention and they happen to be there. The first time I happened to see one in person, I think, was a Sakura Sunday in Philadelphia.
Sakura Sunday?
Yeah, I'm saying it very American.
You are, which is fine.
Yeah. So you can see here they tend to happen in public spaces because public spaces are kind of safe spaces.
Don't go to a stranger's house that you've never met.
Maybe later.
Maybe after you've built a relationship and you know they're not going to kill you, then you can go. But especially when we're talking about people who online are used to interacting, may never see somebody's face, we're going to use a public space to create a safe space to then have a more perhaps full social experience or social interaction that's a little different than the one online.
Well, it's kind of interesting when you go to these because your identity is your doll, because the people have never really... especially if you're just going via a forum, and like the older style of this. Newer style is they create groups on Facebook for regional areas. Older style was basically Den of Angels.
Den of Angels, and then Den of Demons, and
there's a few other ones.
A few.
Resinality,
which is now long dead.
So this was the old format of it, which you wouldn't really post a picture of yourself. You'd just be posting pictures of your doll. So that kind of became your identity. And so, if I came to a meet and somebody would go, "Oh, that's Maya. Oh, that means Tempest is here sometime."
They recognize the doll before you.
Yeah, because the doll
you become Maya's mom.
I'm
basically kindergarten.
Yeah,
you're Jessica's mom. It's like one of those things where your identity is so invested in the doll, and the doll is such an avatar for yourself in the interactions you've had with these people. The doll is the front, and you're the back of the identity.
It's kind of like if a person never, ever, ever met you outside of cosplay.
Like the first time I saw one member of the audience without a wig on. That was exciting.
Isn't that like my thing, though?
Yeah, that is your thing, because you have long, glorious hair.
My actual hair. It's true.
Yes.
So, moving forward, though,
Why is there more, like, when you don't have people with you, why are the dolls still something that satisfies a need for other people?
Because obviously you can't go to a meet every day.
That would be weird.
You can't even be posting things on the internet every day, because some of us have jobs and or school and or other things. So you have to gain satisfaction from playing with your doll. Otherwise, the only next satisfaction in your loop will be the next doll meet or the next doll that you purchase or the next item you purchase for your doll.
And don't keep purchasing dolls.
Talking about purchasing items for your doll, you do this to kind of create an ideal image. What you see here is a picture that
Do you want me to step to the side?
No, it's okay. So on the lower left-hand side of it, you see a picture that I actually drew several years before I got her all together to the point on the right.
This picture's about 4 years older than the photo.
Yes. So that was the culmination of it. I had just purchased her gloves, and it was the final piece for me, and she finally felt complete. And that was satisfactory, because just dressing your doll and getting them how you want it, sometimes you can kind of buy them all together and it's ready and it's perfect, but other times, especially with these guys, since they're so customizable, a lot of it is the journey to get there and then the satisfaction upon finally arriving.
Yeah.
And you will always find something else to nitpick. Like, I know...
It's never going to be super complete, because the image you have in your head is never something you can make fully realized in real life. If you're a creator of any kind, you know this to be true.
Like, even though she was pretty perfect at this point, they have these things called jointed hands as well, and I still have not...
to do this.
Yeah, especially because like she could play guitar, and I could take pictures of her.
You wanted it for the swords.
Also the swords.
But here's what's going into this, is this ideal image idea. We're always striving to create something of ourselves that is the ideal image of ourself. There's a goal, the point you have. You don't quite look the way you want to do. This is where self-image dysphoria kind of comes in, is an extreme side of you do not look like how you feel. And that's a very deep emotional thing. And when you create something, or you're trying to look for an ideal image of like the ideal aesthetic for you, or the ideal for this thing that is you're projecting into, like that, there's a lot emotionally and mentally that go into that process.
Yeah, sometimes it won't be even your ideal image. It'll be your ideal image of a cool visual K guy.
The coolest visual K guy you can ever imagine.
How big should his hair be?
What color should the hair be?
Can it be multiple colors?
Maybe 3 colors.
Definitely 2 different color eyes.
And this is the process. Because in your head, there's an excitement to that. There's something... So we're so driven to make idealized things, which is maybe not always a good thing.
Yeah. There's actually... Talking about this, a current movement in the doll hobby within the last few years, as smaller casters have been able to do more and more things with 3D printing, there's been alternative body sizes that have gone up. So plus sizes, deformities are often modded in, if not made like that
there's
originally.
Hobbyists who will make a doll that like themselves may have a disability, such as a non-working leg or a missing arm. And through that, they're able to sort of take on that identity of themselves through a separate object, which then it's easier sometimes to talk about or deal with something that you're dealing with when you can place that identity or that thing on the doll. But the doll is also an idealized self. So when we allow an idealized thing to have things such as physical disabilities, you're taking a stigma away from the physical disability. This is a beautiful art object without an arm, and it's still a beautiful art object.
It's still badass.
It's still badass. That is almost a revolutionary thing that you can do for another person.
So, past creating it, perhaps I got a new outfit for it, and you sit there and you dress and you style the doll. This is where we get that GABA one again, which I'm forgetting the long term for. We're just going to say GABA. That's the meditation chemical.
Right.
So, as you sit there and methodically dress them, comb their stray hairs away. I'm sorry, all this is terrible right now with her hair.
You know when your wig's all fuzzy? Same problem.
Yeah, except the flyaways. When your flyaway's this big in like scale, it's like her flyaway's out here.
The worst flyaways of your life.
So you dress the doll, you style the doll, you get it into a new outfit, and it looks really cool, and you feel accomplished because you put them in new something. It's new, so you feel a little bit of dopamine kind of happening.
It's a new image, it's a new iteration on something, and you're always trying to make sort of it perfect.
Yeah.
But perfect's impossible.
Yes, so if it just sat on your shelf in the same way for a long, long time, like a picture, it'd be kind of static like a picture. You might look at it and have the fond memories of when you got it, the feelings you had when you had it, but you're not getting increased, continual feelings of good out of it. You might not have any new epiphanies about it.
My doll epiphany.
So dressing these guys, their outfits can be quite spectacular.
As this one is.
This one is handmade by me, and
From
so
ages
is
past.
and so is this guy thing. And then over here we have an outfit by Volks on a Volks doll, who is quite spectacular in the scale of the print. As we just went to a lovely Wafuku panel, we can see all the wonderful layers actually on the neck. We know that are
we know the names for them now.
I forgot them all.
What's the name? What's the name of the color thing?
The one that goes all the way.
Date Eri.
So it actually has a Date Eri, and then on the inner layer it has a Naga Juban. So, and of course
applying learned things.
Wait, here's a new one. And then in the hair we have a 1/3 scale. Kanazashi!
Remembered it!
Good. So it can be quite ornate, and so when you get them all together, it feels really cool. Like you created a new piece of art.
The process isn't very stressful. I mean, you're dressing a doll. It takes time of consistent, low-level concentration that you're not really getting too stressed out over unless, like, something horrible happens.
And it falls off the table, or it's a very...
takes a head dive off the table, and you're like, oh no!
Or it kicks you in the face like that one nearly did.
Some of them are strung more tightly than others. But the process of dressing a doll is extremely soothing because it's like knitting, it's like doing embroidery, it's like doing hand sewing if you don't hate hand sewing. Unless you have that process of something repetitive and consistent that has a really good physical and emotional kind of reaction for you.
Of course, something else that's meditative is actually creating the art for yourself. So
this is also made by Becca.
So we have a few costumes here today. This is
all made by her.
Muko from Itoshi no Muko, or Lovely Muko.
It's about a dog.
Which is why I'm wearing my shirt. It's really cute. I recommend it. We also have this ball gown that is inspired by Full Metal Alchemist.
Can I take a picture of your doll later?
Yes! Full Metal Alchemist.
Full Metal Alchemist.
Yeah.
Sponsored by the Full Metal Alchemist.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Over here we have the example of Ginsha.
Gajinka.
I know it.
You know, like when you take an animal and you give it a human form. Gajinka.
Yes.
It's a Gajinka God damn, now I can't talk.
Glaceon. In fact, it's a shiny Glaceon, which I made for an art trade on the community. So several cool things going on here, interaction.
Really cool social things happening.
Yes. So
like say you're no good at painting anything on a doll. Say you're no good at making certain kinds of objects for a doll. There's so many ways you can interact with them that then express either yourself or to create. You can make photographs. You can buy everything if you want to. You can make photographs, you can do the painting on the faces, you can make wigs, you can make things. There's so many ways that people have found ways to interact with them because there's such an avatar of the self that it allows people of multiple skill sets to interact in the same community.
Speaking of which, you mentioned taking photographs.
So I did!
So obviously after you dress the doll, or you make the really cool new outfit for the doll, huzzah! This one was my most recent one. You take... Oopsie.
Oh, you skipped it.
I did. You take pictures with the doll. And this is also a nice, meditative, challenging process. So also dopamine, also GABA. And depending on your skill level as a photographer, you'll get more into this. Because on the basic scale, I could just take a picture of her dress. On the more expansive scale, I can find 1/3 scale objects to put with her, shoot it in a corner, which makes the room seem like it's in scale, and
there's so much challenge.
And use a different different way of focusing, so both
depth of field.
Use different depth of field, which aids in the fact to make everything feel like it's in one scale, even though it's not. And of course, the more of a challenge it is, the more dopamine you get out of it, and then...
Like with any creative process with photography, the more challenging something is, the more you kind of end up getting into it.
You get the serotonin when you get to the end of it, and you feel good, and then you share it online, and then you feel better when people are posting on it.
And there's a pre-built community to give you this feedback.
So, this is all how we interact with the dolls and how it becomes part of our identity. And you become the person that makes the really great photographs, or the person that becomes the really awesome at sewing, or things like that.
Exactly. The dolls, because of the way they're structured, allow you many avenues to put your identity into them and be identified by them, to create social networks, which is something people really want to do, and becomes a direct visual representation of you.
So, in short, we collect them because it feels good, and we interact with them online because it makes us part of a community that also makes us feel good.
And having a collection and going through the collection process satisfies a certain sort of basic need of human beings.
So,
which is why collections are satisfying to begin with.
So there we go. Thesis proved. Done.
But there's more.
Because no visual culture exists inside of a bubble. Here we have various examples of things that have been influenced by Asian ball-jointed dolls. Some of these are existing in Japan, and some of them are actually things that are from the U.S. We'll start from left, work to right, and come back down to the bottom. On the top left, who knows who this is?
Have you ever seen this kind of picture before?
Yes! So this is from Rose and Maiden. It was an anime
I wish I had a cookie to give you.
Imaginary cookie.
Heart cookie.
This is Formosan Maiden, which follows the animated dolls, which hyper-anime fight each other, which is really rad.
So it's
by
kind of like
German
a
maker.
Sports anime, Bleach-like shonen thing with dolls that take on human characteristics.
And in addition, there's this Highlander thing going on where there can be only one.
Yes, Highlander is also involved.
So somewhere between Bleach, Highlander, and like collecting dolls is Rose and Maiden.
And also the One Clamp series that did a very similar thing.
Yes, so...
Angelic Layer.
Yeah, Angelic Layer.
It's very Angelic Layer.
So obviously you can see it doesn't exist within a vacuum. And these ones are exactly ball-jointed dolls. They come in a case, and Volks actually collaborated with this and made limited editions of them.
So it's kind of gone full circle. They were made inspired by these very dolls, and then the company that originally created the dolls, they made dolls based on the dolls. It's Dollception. So you can see how pop culture can kind of be cyclic that way.
Yes. Next to it, we have kind of like a higher American...
Higher-end American...
Yeah, so less like a child's play doll, more like an adult...
fashion doll.
Collector doll, yeah.
Because, like, beside what we're talking about, there's also a huge thing called fashion doll collecting. Fashion dolls are about Barbie size or 16 inches. They have different characteristics. They have a slightly different history. But this one is a combining of the worlds of the fashion doll collector world and this one.
So this is Evelyn Wild. She has her own really cool backstory when you look into her. I can't remember if she's still in production or not. There was one. I don't
think she is.
I think there was one that was discontinued recently, and it might have been her. And as you can see, she has very gothic
She looks kind of visual K.
Yeah, gothic wear, inspired more along the lines of the American gothic community, but also obviously pulling in elements from gothic Lolita. So in this doll, we have joints at the shoulders, elbows, wrists, hips, I
feel
believe.
like I'm playing head, shoulders, knees, and toes.
Knees and ankles. Knees and ankles. Okay. And so, obviously, just from the interchangeable fashion, the way they went through all the body, this one isn't made out of resin.
Out of plastic?
Yes.
A different plastic, like a Barbie-like plastic.
Yes, but ball-jointed. To the
Which
right.
is, in fashion dolls, almost not unheard of at the time she was made.
Yes, we're getting more into this. To the right, we have Monster High. Who's have heard of Monster High? Yeah.
Does anyone own Monster High dolls?
Yeah.
Ooh.
So Monster High is pretty cool, and we start to see kind of there's like a lot of almost Harajuku, like fashion-y, kind of over-the-top kind of things in their fashion as they kind of do it as like characterized versions of the different monsters. And in addition, once again, we have joints at the shoulders, elbows, wrists, hips, knees. None at the toes because it's a fashion doll and they wanted them to have heels. When
These
you
are
have
also aimed more at a lower age range.
Yes, but it's very cool that it's kind of like what started kind of as a higher hobby art is now affecting the jointed and other dolls.
And these are American-made dolls. These aren't Japanese ones. So you're seeing that the dolls here and their popularity as a cultural item is now influencing other people who are making things aimed at children, which is that's an age where you're very susceptible to suggestion.
Yes.
These visual things impact you very strongly.
And it's not to say that this jointing didn't exist previous to the Monster High dolls. It's just it was often only included with dolls by Mattel for certain reasons. If Barbie had to get on a bike, they would have to give her knees joints so that they could move with the bike. The gymnastic Barbie was given joints, shoulders, elbows, hips, knees, with a tongue and groove joint at the knee in order to do all the really cool gymnastic stuff. I think with one of the earlier Olympics was one of the first versions of that, or the second version of that.
But you also have always seen there's been a split, especially, and we're talking American style here, boys get things that move. Girls get things to put dresses on.
I.e.
Which is changing a bit these days. But it's interesting how these become very popular, and then the girl stuff starts to get joints.
Yes, they start to say, oh, cool. Because previously you used to have a Barbie, and you'd fold her legs kind of out, and then her legs would fit into the
car dash.
Yeah,
where the engine should be.
Right. That's where her legs would be because they could not bend beyond like maybe that.
Yeah.
Let's go over here first. Actually, it brings us to Juku Culture. This was one that was unfortunately a failed attempt in the U.S. at creating a body type.
Look like real human bodies.
Yeah, they created a body that was not accentuated, so the waists were good. The chest was more of a size that an adolescent would have, or preteen, teen kind of size, and they had Harajuku-inspired clothing. And just like these guys, once again, joint, shoulder, elbow, wrist, hip, knee, ankle. Just like
I'm gonna get that memorized one of these days.
Yeah, I should make a song.
We can do a song in our podcast.
Yay! In addition,
you're singing, not me.
Okay. We'll harmonize. We need to.
I can't harmonize. It's not possible for me.
You sing first, I'll go second. So these ones, in addition, also had inset eyes, just like the Asian ball jointed dolls do, which was very cool.
And at the end of the panel, by the way, you're more than welcome to come out and look at them up close. We're fairly trusting individuals.
Yes, if you would like to see a specific function or part of the doll, let me know. I'll pick it up and kind of show it to you. As resin is pretty hardy, but if it falls, it sucks, because these aren't charred.
They are capable of breaking and having injury, but they're more solid than, say, a China or a fine art thing would be.
Finally, we get Figma. Now, Figma comes from a line of kind of action figure-y things, but once again, we see hyper jointing, and this move for joints in dolls is also mirrored by a movement of increased joints in figures,
which is kind of happening parallel to each other. They're not necessarily affecting each other directly, but what's interesting here is this Mirai is actually based on a doll. A smart doll, which is slightly different kind than these guys, is very similar to them.
Yeah, similar in the 1/3 scale, so the slightly larger
So this is more cyclic pop culture feeding into itself.
Mirai was originally a Dollfie dream created by Volks, created into an original character, which the man who made it then eventually made his own line of dolls, anime-faced.
This is Smart Doll, though.
Yes.
Yeah, I see.
Which became Smart Doll. So it became to the point where we now have a 1/3 scale doll that can now hold the Figma, which is now holding a miniature version of the doll. Yes.
So there's iteration
pictures of this, and I should have grabbed one.
Where in terms of visual culture and pop culture, these dolls have like such a devoted following because you have such an emotional reaction to them because of all the things we've just been talking about. That in terms of pop culture, there's been this sort of iterative process where it's coming back in and out of pop culture that's sort of related to or surrounded by it, which is much more invasive than you might imagine.
So, thank you for coming.
So in conclusion, that was pretty much what we wanted to tell you today.
Yes.
We want to thank you very much for sticking with us through the whole panel. We do have another panel in a half hour.
Yes.
In this room.
Which will give us time to, like, have water and, like...
And breathe.
And take questions for whoever isn't interested in the next
panel that we're going to be doing is going to be about purchasing your first doll. There's a lot of terminology. There's a lot of pitfalls to watch out for. It's more complicated than you might think it is. So we're going to walk anyone who would like to purchase their first doll or they're thinking about it, we'll walk through what all the options are and what you have to look for.
Or maybe if you made some mistakes purchasing your first doll and need some advice.
Exactly. But if you enjoyed listening to us today rambling on and on with each other, you can still find us on the internet as Ningyo BINGO because we are doing a podcast.
Yes, it's a lovely podcast. You can find us on iTunes just simply typing in Ningyo BINGO.
We're the only people with the name.
GYOBINGO on iTunes or Google or Facebook will help you find us. Yes.
So if you're interested in hearing more from us or you'd like to give us feedback about this panel or anything else you'd like to hear someone talk about, research for you, please feel free to go to any of these places and send us a message and let us know you saw us at CPAC. And maybe we'll think of something fun to do with that.
Yeah. Hey, if we get enough questions, we can have a question section. We can have a question section. I hope you liked that little glimpse into our lovely panel that we had. We had lots of fun at CPAC, and I would be glad to do any more doll conventions or anime conventions as they come up. And of course, we'll have more episodes coming up, and there's one more video episode for you to take a look at. As always, you can find us on Facebook, on iTunes, and just by Googling us. So, as always, keep having fun, but keep a budget.